Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. I am Caspian and I read a lot of books. And this is the Spring is in the Air book tag. So I haven't officially been tagged to do this video, but I just wanted to. I saw the bookworm do it and I was like, that sounds fun. And I want to do more book tag kind of videos because I enjoy going into my own mind and answer different questions about reading, about books, and come to some realizations about how I feel about certain books. Yeah, it's a fun way to just explore reading but without reading. Explore books. I was gonna say booking, but that's something completely different. Yeah. So I feel sometimes my Swedish accent comes through a lot more. Oh yeah, sometimes I sound like Alexander Skarsgård in that reel, where he is when they ask him to speak with a Swedish accent. So yeah, I'm not gonna do that now though. I'm not gonna lean into it too much, but if it pops up, it does. So I'm sure I have an accent without even knowing it. So okay, so there are 8 questions, and the first one is name a book that made you feel warm and fuzzy. And I had to think about this, or I thought I had to think about this, and then I just went with what came to my mind first of all, like the first book that came to my mind, and that was Legends and Lattes. I read this last year, 2024, and immediately, I think it was like halfway through it or something, and I realized I need to buy this and read it. And I bought this one and the second one, so I read both. But this one, because there isn't like one specific moment for me, like that makes me warm and fuzzy, and the way I interpret this question is like a whole book that made me feel like that. And this, I loved this book, and I love books similar to this where the atmosphere and the ambiance is like, in this it's a coffee shop where they make cinnamon buns. And so in this book, Vivian is retiring of a sort she's an orc and she's retiring, and she wants to make coffee, sell coffee, and nobody knows what coffee is. So like the plot, or what to say about in this book, is for her to just settle down, open this coffee shop, and just do that. And then there's a storyline around it as well, because nothing is ever that simple. But just the friendships that she makes, and the small love story that's simmering a bit, everything just makes it warm and fuzzy to me. So that's that book. And then number 2, April Showers, a book that's set near or in water, or that has water in the title. And the book that I came up with is this. So this is the Swedish paperback, small paperback edition, like pocket size book, but it's a bit bigger than a normal pocket size book. So this is, I think it's called The Story of Atlas, or Pasalt in English, and it's the same in Swedish, but it's in Swedish. So Harry Whittaker and Lucinda Riley, Atlas, historien om Pasalt, allt kommer avslöjas. And I think the English is just, the story of Pasalt. So this is the 8th book, the conclusion of the series about the 7 sisters. And in this conclusion, it's all about their dad. So this, in the series, in the beginning of the series, the father in this series dies, and he has 7 adopted daughters, and each book of the 7 first books are about one of each daughter. Like each daughter has a book. That's the way to say it. And he leaves them clues to their past, like where they came from, who their parents are, and it's about their discovery of their roots, and they incorporating that into their life as it is now. So this is the final book where they find out a lot of things about their father. So he is actually he died on a boat, or like he didn't die on a boat. Let's see, in the first book they find out that he has been he didn't die on the boat, but he was like scattered in the ocean from a boat. Like his funeral was from a boat in the water in the, I think it's supposed to be the Mediterranean Sea. So and all of the books, including this one, is centered a lot around the Greek islands and other parts of the Mediterranean Sea and all around the world. But there's a lot of water, there's a lot of boating, a lot of about the relationship to the ocean and his relationship to the ocean or to the sea, and yeah, so that's water. Spring break. Talk about the time where you got a break from reading and why. And this was kind of hard for me at first, because I was like, ever since I started reading again, I haven't really had a break. I've had like one day here and there that I haven't read in the past year. And then I was like, well, before that, what happened before that? Because as I said, I've started reading again, which means I at one point stopped before that. And that's what I'm going to talk about. So it was quite simple, and it wasn't due to anything really, you know, like some people stop when they get sick or they get like burned out with reading or that sort of thing. But for me it was the pandemic, because of 2 things. The pandemic made me not be able to earn as much money, because I have my own company, and the business kind of dwindled in the beginning of the pandemic, so I wasn't able to buy books, and I mainly read library books anyway. So the thing was that when the pandemic hit, I wasn't able to go to the library anymore because they shut down. So they shut down the libraries for a long time, and you couldn't really visit them. Well, they didn't. They did shut them down, I think, for a while. And even if they didn't, because I can't remember anymore, but it had to do with like being able to go to the library and that sort of thing. So the pandemic kind of made that difficult to get out and go to the library and borrow books in the same capacity. So I kind of just stopped, and I started when I started, the few times I read was in the summers, and I just went back to my favorite books that I already had at home, like rereading during the summers. So the other parts of the year, for like a couple of years, maybe 3 years, until I started reading again like a year ago, properly, more. That's the way it was, and that was simply because of the lack of accessibility to books in the same way as before. So number 4, a book or author a book or author you always go back to for comfort. And I have 2. So the first one is like a nostalgic type of read, and that is C.S. Lewis. Let's see if it says here. C.S. Lewis. And, you know, the Tales of Narnia. And, the Tales of Narnia. I don't know what all of the books are called in English. Is it the Chronicles of Narnia? That's right. The Chronicles. And this is my favorite one of all times, which is Caspian, Prince of Narnia, or Caspian the Prince of Narnia. Is that the English title though? So my dad used to read this to us when we were children, me and my younger brother. Prince Caspian is just the title of this. It's from the 1950s. Yikes. So he used to read these to us when we were children, and it's where my name is from. So that's as simple as that, you know. And these are really comforters for me, and I just snuggle up with them and feel at home and remember, you know, it's like a security blanket from the few times in my childhood when I felt secure, and when I felt like I could let my mind wander and my fantasy, you know, I could really indulge in that. So C.S. Lewis are all of his books I go back to, and I don't own them. This is my dad's copy. This is my dad's copy. I want this edition. This is a Swedish edition from 1951, and this is what I want. Somehow I'm hanging on to it for as long as he'll let me, or something like that. And then the other comfort book reader is Jenny Colgan. And if you follow my channel, you know that I recently became very disappointed in her. Because there's an older series that has finally been published in Swedish. And I read the first one in that series, was The School by the Sea. And I was thoroughly disappointed because it had a lot of fat phobia and a lot of like just weird things in it, and it was kind of YA or even middle grade. I didn't bond with it, and I really hated I want to use that word. I really despised and hated the way she talked about you know, how she talked about it, because she didn't talk about it. She expressed fat phobia in the book through her different characters. It was not very well handled at all. But before that one anomaly, I'm not gonna keep on reading that series. I'm not. But before that anomaly, I really found comfort in her other series. So this is one that I picked out. I have like a lot of her books. So this is one. It's from A Distant Shore, I think the English title is. I'm gonna see. A Very Distant Shore by Jenny Colgan. An avlägsen kust in Swedish. So this is the first one in a series, and I have all of the ones in this series, and I also have all of the ones in her series with like small libraries and that sort of thing. So I really enjoy the setting in her books. I find it very comforting and very. They're feel-good books. There's always a bit of romance in, but the romantic parts aren't the dominant part for me. It's more of like the setting, the landscape, and that sort of thing that I find really comforting. And I can see she writes the description of the environment so well that I can picture myself there. It's like I'm sitting at the table eating the baked goods from the bakery, or it's like I'm visiting the small little bookshop inside a van and picking out books and greeting the people together with the main character. And so I really enjoy this, and this is most often is my summer read, but she has some Christmas themed books that I use. So I usually end up reading them during the summer and then autumn up to winter and Christmas, because I want to reread them from the first one each time. So I have reread these a number of times. The fifth question is Blooms, a book that started slowly, then blossomed into a new favorite read. And this was hard for me, because that's not how I work. That's not how my mind works. I really can't find a book in my memory that I have not liked in the beginning and then blossomed into my favorite read. I have had books that I haven't been sure of, or that have been like had a slow start and then a strong finish, and I can think of books that I was reluctant to pick up because I didn't have any high expectations, and I had like maybe prejudice against them because of different things, maybe the genre or it's YA or whatever, and then they surprised me. But starting a book and then it being slow and then being a favorite at the end, I haven't really had that. So because if I'm not enjoying the book, like the first quarter of the book, I'm not afraid of DNFing. I'm like, life is too short for reading books I don't enjoy. I have more books to read, especially since I'm a library rat, you know, because I don't buy books and then feel like, oh, I have to read this because I spent money on it. I can just return it to the library and then read the next one. So maybe the book I'm reading right now could be one of those, because it did started slow. But I'm not sure yet. I'm not going to talk about it. I'm going to talk about that probably in my March wrap-up. Because when I'm filming this, it's the 28th of March. So I still have the weekend to finish the book I'm currently reading. And I think that I'm going to do that. So in my March wrap-up, I'm going to talk about that book. And that is a book by Alexander McCall Smith. But for now, I haven't really experienced that to my memory or knowledge. One that it comes close, though, is a book that I didn't really have. I was intrigued, but I didn't have high expectations until I opened it up and I started reading it. And it was slow in the sense, like, from the first page I knew I wanted to annotate it, because I was like, there's so much knowledge in this book, and I want to underline and keep everything. But it was a slow type of read. It took me 3 months to read this book, and at the end it really is one of my favorites. And it's a non-fiction. It's Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmerer. And I just look at this. Look at this. I adore this book. And by the end I was like annotating whole pages in different colors, and yeah, I love this book. And I think there are pages where I definitely did not listen to the advice of not underlining everything. So this is definitely one that surprised me in how much I just adored it by the end. So number 6, Eggs in a Basket. 3 books you want to read this spring. And I had to really think about this, because I had to think about it in the concept of this spring, like in the next few months and nothing else. So what I did was I don't have them, physical copies, so I looked them up on Goodreads. And I have my computer in front of me. So the first one is a book that I actually have on hold at the library, and I can go get it. I have to retrieve it within a week, but I'm not going to retrieve it right now. I'm waiting for more things in my phone, more books to because there are like 4 other books that are pending. And I'm gonna see how many of those are actually gonna land at the library before I have to go pick up this book. So the first one is Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies. Let's see if I can do this. So here it is on Goodreads. And let me see. I can't really come closer, unfortunately. Yeah, I don't know if I'm gonna read a lot about this, but let's see if I can keep you still as well. A curmudgeonly professor journeys to a small town in the far north to study fairy folklore and discovers dark fae magic, friendship and love in the start of a heartwarming and enchanting new fantasy series. Cambridge professor Emily Wilde is good at many things. She is the foremost expert on the study of fairies. She is a genius, scholar, and a meticulous researcher who is writing the world's first encyclopedia of fairy lore. But Emily Wilde is not good at people. She could never make small talk at a party or even get invited to one, and she prefers the company of her books, her dog, and the fair folk. So when she arrives in the hard Scrabble village of Rafshenvik, Emily has no intention of befriending the gruff townsfolk, nor does she care to spend the time with another new arrival, her dashing and insufferable handsome academic rival Wendell Bumblebee, who manages to charm the townsfolk, get in the middle of Emily's research, and utterly confound and frustrate her. So I'm hoping to really enjoy that. Because I don't know, because I think it's because I love the cover of the books. And there are 3 books in that series or trilogy, and I hope I'm just gonna love them and immerse myself into that world. Then the second book is Remarkably Bright Creatures by Shelby van Pelt. And I'm doing this now, I'm holding it. I'm just gonna remove this little thing over here from YouTube. Remarkably Bright Creatures. Oh, I'm sorry. An exploration of friendship, reckoning and hope, tracing a widow's unlikely connection with a giant Pacific octopus. And I have just heard so many wonderful things about this book. And I don't know if I'm gonna read it in English or in Swedish. I prefer to read it in the original language. So if that is English, which I think it is, I'm gonna do that. It also depends on what's available at my library when I get to it. I did miss my local bookshops. I think like 1 month ago, like in March. I haven't been able to go out much in March because of my surgery. So I missed when my local bookshop had it for like half price or like 30% or something. It was so cheap, and I missed the opportunity to buy it. So I'm gonna have to pick it from the library. So the last book is The Strawberry Patch Pancake House. And this is by Laurie Gilmore. It's the 4th book in the Dream Harbor series. And I love the Dream Harbor series. I just adore the other 3 books. Not in the same on the same level. There are one that I like more than the others, but still. Fall in love with a brand new spring romance set in Dream Harbor from the best-selling author of Pumpkin Spice Cafe. As a renowned chef, single dad Archer never planned on moving to a small town, let alone running a pancake restaurant. But Dream Harbor needs a new chef, and Archer needs a community to help raise his daughter Olive. And I actually don't want to know more than that. Because I'm just looking forward to immersing myself into the Dream Harbor world again. And my plan is to get a hold of this. I want it. I need to buy it. She has become an auto-buy author for me. I don't really have auto-buy authors anymore. I used to have Jenny Colgan and Lucinda Riley, but now I have Laurie Gilmore. So I own one of the previous 3 books, and I want to own them all. I do because I want to reread them. That's the level of like I have for these books. So this is set in the spring. That's why it's on my spring list, on my spring want to read list. The next question is Green Pastures, a classic that never gets old. And here we have this one. Yep, Never Let Me Go by Kazuo Ishiguro. Hailsham seems like a pleasant English boarding school, far from the influences of the city. Its students are well tended and supported, trained in art and literature, and become just the sort of people the world wants them to be. But, curiously, they are taught nothing of the outside world and are allowed little contact with it. Within the grounds of Hailsham Kathy grows from schoolgirl to young woman, but it's only when she and her friends Ruth and Tommy leave the safe grounds of the school, as they always knew they would, that they realize the full truth of what Haitian is. Never Let Me Go breaks through the boundaries of a literary novel. It is a gripping mystery, a beautiful love story, and also a scathing critique of human arrogance and a moral examination of how we treat the vulnerable and different in our society. In exploring the themes of memory and the impact of the past, Ishiguro takes on the idea of a possible future to create his most moving and powerful book to date. And this book actually turns 20 years old on April 5th this year. Who knew? I read this the first time. I must have read it when it came out, but it feels like I read it even before that, because it feels... reading it has a nostalgic lure to me, but it was only 20 years ago. And I say that because I grew up in the 90s. So I'm like, didn't I read this in high school? Or in the didn't I read this way before 2005? But apparently I didn't. So I gave this a 5-star, of course. And I have read it at least three times in the last 20 years. And I read it this fall last, I think. I read it like 6 months ago. And it's really, for me, it's a really dystopian kind of book, and that's what I like about it. And it's also one of the books that really made me love dystopian books. That one and another book called Nike, a Swedish author, I think. I really enjoy when authors create this imaginary world of what could be, and Never Let Me Go is a book that I'm gonna spoil it a bit. So if you don't want me to spoil it at all, then just jump ahead or something, because there's only one more question last after this. So in Never Let Me Go, the children of the school find out. It says on the Goodreads, it sounds like they don't understand it until they are grown up, but that's not the case. They understand it much earlier, but on different levels, and some students seem like they always knew it, but while some others kind of ignore, and that is the fact that they are spares. So they are created, they are clones, they are and they are created so that they can be spares. So all that they are spares. They are a collection of spare parts for other people to get when they grow old or weak or whatever. And and in the book they go through a journey of wanting to know who their original are. And it's an interesting deep dive into the morality of cloning and that kind of research, and how far it could go if some people could, if the wrong people, in my opinion, would get a hold of the science and really move it forward. And I really like that kind of philosophical, moral aspect of the book. And it never grows old, because it's always a possibility. I think that's why I think it's a book that never gets old. Yeah, because it explores some of the deepest, darkest sides to humanity, and there's always more to explore, and there's always things that this book awakens inside of me. Like, each time I read it, I'm a little bit older, I have a little bit more experience, the world is a bit more crappy. And I can read it from the new point of view of where I am in life and where the world is at. And it seems like for every time I read this future becomes more of a deep dark possibility, and not just the deep dark nature of humanity. So this is one of my all-time favorite reads. And the weird thing is, I used to own this book, and I unhauled it. I think I unhauled it maybe moving in with my boyfriend. I think so. I think that's when it just went out the door, because I had to. I lived alone, and then I got injured, and I had to move in with my dad, and I lived with my dad for about 8 months. No, April, May, June, July, August. 5 or 6 months I lived with my dad, so I had to like downsize to just a couple of boxes from being in my own home. And then when I moved in here, I didn't have much, and I slowly rebuilt my life. So I think it must have been on hold in the process of moving into my dad's. So Never Let Me Go by Kazuo Ishiguro. So the last question is pollen. A book or author you are allergic to. This one's so easy. It has to be J.K. Rowling. I was contemplating Neil Gaiman, but I think both, but J.K. Rowling for sure. And I think it's easier for me to really be allergic to her, because I was never a Harry Potter fan. I wasn't really a Harry Potter fan. I think we read the first book. Either my dad did or we did in school when I was a child. But I didn't really get into it back then. I don't remember why. I just didn't enjoy it. And then I saw one movie when those started coming out, and I was like, nah. I had been in my experience. My experience is feeling a bit too old for it, or maybe I was like a teenager and I was like, oh, this is for children or something like that. I don't know. I was my mind was all over the place at that time. So I didn't really get into the books, and I was never a Potter fan. I haven't read all of the books. I haven't. I'm not a part of that world or community. So it's easier for me, I think, to really put more weight into her as a person, like the author as a person, and really see the damage that she's doing without having this connection to her writing that a lot of people have. It doesn't affect my view on her. So the writing and the books, the Harry Potter world doesn't affect me in any capacity, you know. So I think that is why it's much easier for me to be like, ugh, and just turn my head. While other people, I know there are people my age as well, that has more of a nostalgic, and they are immersed in the world, and they have a harder time separating the art from the artist. I don't have that problem. Not with her. So, yep, that's the one. And that's the Spring is in the Air book tag. So I'm gonna tag a few people, but if you are not tagged and you watch this and you're like, oh, I want to answer those questions, then consider yourself tagged. I would like to know what JTH Books think about these. I would like to know his answers to these questions, and maybe also Ven's Corner. And do I have a third one? I don't know. I can't really think of a third one from the top of my head. I'm trying to think of like smaller booktubers with not as small as me, but anyway, I don't know. So consider yourself tagged if you feel like this was interesting and you want to share your answers to these questions. So a book that made you feel warm and fuzzy, a book set near water, in water, or has water in the title, spring break, a time where you took a break from reading and why, And then I think it's Swallow's Homecoming. A book or an author that you always go back to for comfort. And then Blooms, a book that started slow but blossomed into a new favorite read. Eggs in a Basket, three books that you want to read this spring. And then Green Pastures, a classic that never gets old. And number 8, Pollen, a book or author that you are allergic to. That's a wrap, folks. Happy reading!